All right, can everyone see my screen? All right. All right, well, thank you for attending our winter symposium. I know spring is right around the corner, but we have an amazing speaker today, Dr. Lucas Zullo, who will be presenting an overview on the Safe Alternatives for Teens and Youth Safety Program. For some of you who have not been able to meet me, my name is Sadie Crow, and I am the project manager for CVCA, and I work under the Child Abuse Prevention Center. I would like to introduce Dr. Lucas Zullo. He is an assistant professor at Thomas Jefferson University in Philadelphia and the clinical director of the David Farber Aspire Center, which is a suicide prevention specialty center. Dr. Zullo has a passion for community-partnered, equity-driven care and is committed to making high-quality, evidence-based services available to all families seeking care at the Aspire Center. Dr. Zullo is also one of the founders and co-leaders of the Trauma-Informed Suicide Prevention and Postvention community of practice within the National Child Traumatic Stress Network. And his research focuses on quality improvement of clinical services with an emphasis on care for the LGBTQ+ youth at risk for suicide. So we are very, very happy to have him here. And I will be passing it off to Lucas.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for that introduction. It's really wonderful to be here with you all today. I was so excited when Sadie reached out. I'm hearing about the work that you're doing. These are the types of people that I like to meet with. We can have time to chat together about what we can do to help youth and prevent suicide. So let me go ahead and share my screen. So my goal with you for the next 2 hours is to give you an overview of the safety program. I want to state right up that this is not a comprehensive training in the safety program. And the reason for that is that we only have 2 hours together today. To do full training in safety is usually about 9 hours. And that is a 9-hour master training, followed by probably about 6 months of consultation calls, an hour a month, then sometimes even a booster training. I'd like to say that right up ahead because I'm more than happy to discuss, present, share resources, but I don't want to give any misconception that folks are now, trained to deliver this intervention that usually takes about 6 months of intensive training. More than happy to hear about people, using elements of this intervention to strengthen and support their current practice, but just want to give that small disclaimer. In terms of my style, I really want this to be pretty laid back. I'm really excited to be with you all today. If you ever have any questions, feel free to pop them in the chat. If you want to raise your hand, if you want to jump in, that's fine. If it's a kind of clarifying question, great. That would be awesome for me to hear. But if it's more of kind of like a discussion question or like a more in-depth kind of follow-up question, we do have protected time for questions at regular intervals. And each hour, I blocked off about, probably 2 or 3 instances to pause for folks to ask questions. So something I want to state right off the bat is that everything I'm talking about today, I view through a trauma-informed lens. I really feel very strongly that the field of suicide prevention has gone in the direction that trauma-informed care is the evidence-based approach to suicide prevention. I think, and I see this in my day-to-day work, I see the overlap of trauma and suicidality, but also just trauma and navigating the mental health care system in the United States. We know that our healthcare system, our mental health care system, is unbelievably challenging, even some would say broken. That is part of that trauma informed. And so when I say trauma, I don't mean just, like physical abuse or sexual abuse, because I'll be honest, when I was, or in my training or even pretty early in the field, I said, oh, I know what trauma is. Trauma is just three boxes that, I check on an intake form. It's like I check off, is there physical abuse in the home? Is there sexual abuse? Is there emotional abuse? That was my conceptualization of trauma. And what I learned is that trauma, the lens, has widened significantly. Traumas can be things like facing racism, facing homophobia, being put on a wait list for months when you or your child needs care. Trauma can happen to youth who are just navigating our society in everything that's going on, being exposed to our political climate, going on Instagram and seeing just the widest variety of content can lead to trauma experiences. Similarly for parents, getting their youth connected to care, having to suddenly be a parent that no one trains you to be a parent of a child who's at risk for suicide. That's a traumatic experience. And so recognizing that and having that be as a primary leading lens in your work is a key part of the safety approach. And so two kind of key terms that I want to define right on are psychological safety and resisting potential re-traumatization. Those two key elements are really at the heart of Safety A and the Safety 12-week program. The first is promoting psychological safety. It's helping folks to feel comfortable, that they understand what are the limits of confidentiality, what is reporting abuse, what is reporting suicide, when would I maybe need to be recommended for a higher level of care. Knowing that the space is safe to share openly and honestly about suicide and any other things that may be going on. The second is resisting potential re-traumatization. So understanding that people may have had experiences in the healthcare system with people who look like you, have titles like you, are in the settings that you work. There may be a trauma experience that people are bringing with them to their first session with you, but also throughout care. Many times people will make a recommendation of, call 911 if there's a crisis, for example, go to the emergency department. And what's going on in someone's mind is, how could I call 911? I don't trust emergency services. I don't trust police. I have no idea what's going to happen to me and my family. I could never go to the emergency department. When I've been there before, I would wait hours and hours and hours, and they just tell me, oh, you can just go home. And so knowing that there are these experiences that people have had that could lead them to view you and your recommendations and frankly treatment differently, that's part of resisting potential re-traumatization. So having a more comprehensive view of what trauma is and how we can apply that trauma lens to care is an essential part of suicide prevention. A trauma-informed lens does not end at patient care. It also includes us. I could do a whole presentation on secondary traumatic stress and burnout and the effects on people like us doing this work. That's not the goal of today. The goal of today, though, is I want us all to remember that, believe it or not, we have emotions too, and that we want to promote our own psychological safety today. I'm going to be talking to you about suicide for 2 hours, and we're not taking a break. Please take a chance to check in with yourself, monitor your own emotional responses, and do what you need to take care of yourself. It is 100% fine to get up, get a drink of water, stretch, take a bathroom break, or even just say, I need a minute. Lucas is just going on and on about suicide prevention among kids, and I need a break. That is part of that promoting psychological safety, our trauma-informed lens, including ourselves and our own self-care. So, in terms of my overview for today, I'm giving an overview of the safety program. The safety program is a 12-week intervention, family-focused intervention for suicide prevention. It is broken into several different components. It is designed to be 12 weeks, where during those 12 weeks, there's weekly youth individual therapy, weekly parent or caregiver individual therapy, and weekly family therapy. So there are three components to care. When you look up the intervention and that sort of thing, you'll often see overlap with the term that is safety or FISP, the Family Intervention for Suicide Prevention. I'm going to give a quick disclaimer on terms because it can get really confusing if you start to look up papers and book chapters on this because the terms have changed over time. So I just want to give a quick terminology breakdown. When I say safety, I refer to the 12-week intervention, which is what I'm talking about today. When I talk about safety A or FISP, the Family Intervention for Suicide Prevention, that's the first session, day 1 of the safety intervention. That is 1 day, 1 session. Safety is the 12-week intervention. You're going to hear me talk very briefly about safety B in a few slides. And the reason I have the letter B is because in more recent papers and resources, the way that the ASAP Center, which is where I worked at UCLA, has broken things down, is they are now referring safety A as day 1. Safety B is if you don't have time to do the full 12-week model, we can abbreviate down to maybe a 5-week stabilization period. That's not what today is about. And then they're referring to our 12-week program, the safety model that I'm talking about today. You'll see it more recently labeled as safety C. I'm just going to say safety because it's going to drive us all crazy if I'm keep doing all these letters. But I just want to let you know if you were to go on our website or read our book chapters, that's what's going on. So what I'm going to do to start is that the first hour of today is going to be focused actually on the Safety A intervention, which is again the first session of Safety A. The reason I'm spending so much time on the first session of a 12-week program is that there's a lot of content there that I feel can be really generalizable to assessment and triage and kind of risk stratification. And these are skills that are really kind of generalizable. The second hour of today is going to be spent on the 12-week delivery of the safety program. That's going to be a kind of overview of what this intervention looks like, and it's going to break down each of the components of what that can be in terms of working with youth and their families for that suicide risk stabilization and safety. All right, so switching into safety A, the goal of the first session of delivering the safety program. The goal of delivering safety A, which can also be a standalone intervention, it's a therapeutic assessment. That's the goal of day 1. That's the goal of the intake, is that so many times we get feedback from families, I'm sure you've heard this before, that day 1, you just ask me a lot of questions. Day 1, I actually don't get treatment. I just have to fill out all these intake forms. You ask me my history. You ask me about all the times I've done X, Y, and Z. It's next week that I start to actually get therapy. It's starting the goal of safety A, the goal of the safety program is to push against that narrative. And the goal is for it to be an assessment of imminent risk. We need to gather data, that's the assessment part. But the therapeutic assessment piece is we're also delivering a therapeutic dose. They are walking away having received an evidence-based intervention. That's the goal of the first session. And what do I mean by that? And you'll see my bullet points here. Those are kind of the mechanisms through which we're operating in order to have that be a therapeutic assessment. So during that conversation, we are striving to improve linkage to outpatient treatment. What I mean by that is that includes you. And so it is linking them to stay with you, feel comfortable continuing care with you, or for whatever reason, you need to refer out, feeling confident that they can trust you and that they're going to follow your recommendations to link to that referral. Next, we want to increase safety. This is designed for youth at risk for suicide. When you look at the data, the empirical literature, this has been studied extensively with youth ages 12 to 17. We are currently doing an expansion of that in a current trial to expand the age range up to 24. We're probably in year 2 of that trial. We do not have any concrete numbers because it's a 5-year trial, but we're getting feedback on what changes need to be done in order to implement this. Clinically, this has been used with younger youth as well. Clinically, it's been used as young as kind of 7 or 8 years old. But because I'm a PhD, I'm a total nerd about like the science and the data, there have not been trials with youth younger than 12. So I just be very clear about what the data shows, what the clinical experience shows, because there's been more clinical application than the research in terms of younger kids. So when I say increased safety, what I mean is that because this is session 1 of an intervention, we want them to be able to come back by staying out of the hospital. And so we want to make sure that we have a robust safety plan in order to keep them safe in the event of a suicidal crisis. We do this by increasing protective processes. Again, this is a family-focused approach. We want to look at the family support. We want to look at access to lethal means. We want to look at the protective monitoring that's available in the home from caregivers, from support figures, whoever is a protective adult. With the youth, we want them to feel like you are able to help them increase hope for the future, increase hope that you are going to provide the care that they need, increase hope that they're able to learn how to stay safe. And we do this by touching upon components of emotion regulation and distress tolerance. Hear me loud and clear. This is not delivering CBT or DBT somehow magically in an intake session. No, it is informed by the elements of CBT and DBT. And I'm going to go over exactly what that means. I just always get that one person in training who's like, is Lucas saying that I need to like do DBT and an intake assessment in session 1? No, I'm not insane. So just want to give that quick note. I love data. I love numbers. And so I do want to give a shout out to the original trial of Safety A. Safety A was developed prior to the safety program as a standalone intervention. It was designed to be an intervention in the emergency department. It was tested in UCLA's emergency room. In this study, this is all the way back in 2011, and if you want to look up the paper, the citations at the bottom. And also just to note, everything that I'm talking about today is based on our empirical literature and our publications. If you ever want to look those up, you can go to our ASAP
The
Center web.
name of
And
the
that
training?
website is asapnctsn.org. If you go to that website and you click on the tab that says what we do, you will see a separate subheading tab that says suicide prevention. Under that tab, you'll see all of our papers. And so anything that I'm kind of presenting with graphs or data or anything, all of that's there for you to take a look at if you like. So I just want to focus on this one, that looking at kind of treatment as usual, not enhanced in any way by evidence-based care, about 20% of families who receive services for suicide prevention or self-harm for youth linked to care. They followed up on the referrals in a not so great rate. This number freaks me out a little bit. Versus looking at FISP, which again is that one session Safety A, the Family Intervention for Suicide Prevention, 92% of families were able to effectively link to care after receiving this one session intervention in the emergency department. In terms of the duration, the timing of how long this one session lasts, it's incredibly flexible and variable. Safety A has been rolled out in a variety of settings, in school settings, in primary care settings, in homeless shelters, in psychiatric inpatient units, in IOPs, and a console liaison service. Those are all places that Safety A has been used. And because of that, it's been 15, 20 minutes up to like an hour and a half intake process in an IOP. And so just want to note that this is incredibly variable in terms of delivering this intervention with the core components in a way that fits the setting. So now is finally the time that I'm actually going to tell you what are these interventions? What consists of Safety A, safety, all the good stuff I'm telling you about. Well, like any good CBTer, I love an agenda. And so this is the breakdown of what the Safety A intervention looks like. Safety A consists of time with the youth one-on-one, the caregiver one-on-one, and the family all together. This is the time with the youth one-on-one. We start by setting the agenda. We start by asking, what do you know about what to expect today? What do you know about me, the setting, why you're here? So again, from that trauma-informed lens, immediately empowering the youth to set the agenda with you, lowering that power differential about, this is what's going to happen, and you have no say in it. Giving them an opportunity to ask questions. Because many times I've seen kids and parents haven't told them that they're sitting in a suicide prevention center. And it's a really great chance to give that psychoeducation on what the goal is today and what your role is and how you can support them. The next few points I'm going to go through in our slides. But what's most important is that, oh, I think there's a line. Let me see if I can use my magical co-presenter abilities to erase that. I'm not technological enough, but Sadie, if you're able to help me, I think there may have been a red line on the screen. Um,
I got you.
and so the way you start the session after setting the agenda is by eliciting strengths from the youth, asking them strengths about themselves and asking them strengths about the family. The goal of this is actually not just twofold, it's multi-level. Is one, it switches up the session rhythm. It switches up the expectation of, so tell me about why you're here today. Thank you so much. Which is often what youth and families expect is that I have to tell my whole story about my suicide attempt. And this is going to be triggering for me. It switches from maybe an assumption to the negative to now let's actually start with the positive. It does the job of switching up that script, switching up the rhythm, switching expectations, but it's also a chance to build rapport. It's a chance to get to know the youth. And because all of this is a therapeutic assessment, it gives you information. It lets you know, how is the youth viewing themselves? When they list strengths, are they listing kind of objective task-based strengths, like they're good at math or good at their chores? Or are they listing interpersonal strengths? Are they able to list strengths at all? When you ask them about the family, who do they list? Are they listing the person who's in the waiting room right now? Are they listing someone who doesn't even live in the home? Are they able to list anything about the family? How do they view this activity? I've had kids who literally say to me, oh, strengths about the family? Well, can I list that I guess my parents don't beat me? Is that a strength? And so that's a very different presentation than a kid who says, well, the strength is that I can always go to my dad. My mom and I love to do things together on the weekends. We have board game nights every Wednesday. This is an assessment, and it has a therapeutic dose. We are writing all of this down. We're saving all this information because the goal of the day one of the 12-week safety program, the goal of this first session is to establish safety. So we're going to remember all of this for the safety plan, for the discussion on what strengths can we leverage within the family, within the youth, to help them to stay safe. This is a 2-3 minute, maybe 5 minute intervention. We have some stems, some question stems that can be helpful to facilitate this conversation. You can ask about interests, hobbies, what your friends say about you, thinking about a time when things were going better before all of this happened. We never, ever want this to be kind of a task failure. What I mean by that is a kid who says, I don't have any strengths, I can't think of anything. And you're like, okay, on to the next thing. Because that then reinforces the fact that they have nothing good about themselves. And so because of this, you'll see my last bullet point is we always give a forced choice. We list strengths that we observe, that we see, and we ask them to choose. Because we never want it to be a situation where a strength is not identified. I always end up with 3. And what I like to fall back on is, a strength of yours is you're clearly open to meeting new people. You're meeting with me right now. You showed up today. You could just walk out of my office, but you're not. In addition to meeting new people, it seems like you're pretty open to maybe even getting help or learning more about what could help you and your family right now. That's a second strength. Something that I always like to note is because of the trauma-informed lens, I never, ever make an observation about their physical appearance. Because until we know if there's been a history of sexual abuse, that could be a trigger. That could be a trauma reminder. And I had this actually, we got feedback, is that we had a clinician who would always be like, oh, you have such nice hair. You have such great smile. I love your eyes. Like you have great fashion. And it's like very well intentioned. But there was once a case where we had a youth who actually had a history of sexual assault and would always get complimented on her smile. And so that was a pretty negative experience for her to have happen in her first session. And so just want to put that on your radar. We then elicit strengths about the family. And after we elicit strengths about the family, we give the youth a heads up. We say, we would love it if you could share this with your parents or caregivers or whoever's in the waiting room with you during the family session. Could you do that? And give them a heads up that that's something we're going to do in that family all together portion. Next is the feelings thermometer. This is the second task. The way that I typically introduce these is kind of getting to know you. My favorite way of introducing the strengths is, I'm just meeting you for the first time. It'd be a little weird if I just ask you about, a suicide attempt. And I don't even know what you like to do in your free time. Can you tell me a little bit about yourself? Similarly, the way I introduce the feelings thermometer is I say something along the lines of, I still want to get to know you a little bit more. You help me to understand what you're good at, what you like to do, what you guys and your family enjoy together. I'd like to know your emotions a little bit better because we all experience emotions, but we all experience emotions differently because we're different people. I'm wondering if we can take a minute to complete an activity to help me understand how you experience your different emotions. And the way we do this is we introduce a literal thermometer. I'm going to skip ahead for a second. This is the kind of bare bones pared down version that you can write on like, a yellow legal notepad or something like that. And it's quite literally, if for those of you familiar with subjective units of distress, a SUD scale. It's just a SUD scale. But it's a way for us to engage youth in setting anchors for their emotional experiences and setting anchors for what is their typical day to day, what's a crisis level situation, and so on. And so, what we do is we always start by identifying the 0 at the very bottom. Because 0, this is a emotional thermometer of distress. So, 0 is when they're feeling comfortable, calm, relaxed, things are good. When was the last time they felt that way? You can get a very different answer from youth. It can be 2 days ago when I was playing with my dog. I've had youth say it's been 2 years, or I can't remember. Very different clinical presentation. And it's a chance for you to identify the situation, thoughts, feelings, and body sensations for each of them. I then go up to the 10. 10 is the opposite of a 0. Crisis, self-harm, suicide attempt. Your worst day. When was the last time you felt that way? Help me understand. What do you feel? What's going through your mind? What are you doing at that time? But then most important is what I call the danger zone or the boiling point. That can be anywhere on the thermometer. That's the first emergence of suicidality, the first time they're seriously considering self-harm. Many teens say 7, 8, around there. The reason this is important is that we want to catch the danger zone because it's before the 10. It's before the crisis. It's an opportunity to activate our resources and a chance for us to use our coping plan. It's a chance to turn things around. It's a chance that instead of going up towards that 10, I'm going to start to go back down towards that 0. That is a key indicator of, can a youth learn something today to stay safe so they can stay out of the hospital. It can help youth to feel like they go from 0 to 10 and there's no in between, to slow things down, to gain more, I'd say, mindfulness about the escalation of emotion. But above all, I ask them, how are they doing right now? Because you can get a surprise answers. I've had teens who look totally fine, totally relaxed, and I had one say, I'm at a 9. That lets me know I need to change something, because I don't want just to be like, from the sake of being a kind human being, to be talking to someone if they're on the verge of a crisis. What can I do for us to take a break? Do you need a drink of water, stretch? Do you have questions about me? Many times people have questions for me, and they're just like, well, I just think right now, if I don't give you the right answer, you're going to send me to the hospital. Or if I say something wrong, you're going to take me away from my family. Understandable that they'd be near a crisis if that's what they were thinking. So it's a chance to check in, give some psychoeducation, and address whatever might be that distress that they're experiencing with you today. This just gives additional information on the anchors. You can flesh this out a little bit. How are you feeling right now? How do you feel on a normal day-to-day basis? Where were you on your suicide attempts, your instance of self-harm? Gives you some information to kind of fill in the blanks of what their presentation looks like. What can be really nice is you can customize this. This is an example of an emotions thermometer where one of our partners really ran with it and wanted to make it a little more colorful. And they just printed this out and like kind of laminated it for all of their therapy rooms. The takeaway from the emotions thermometer is that it's a chance for teens to learn how to better understand and regulate their emotions. And they have the ability to interrupt their emotions. They have the ability to stop, change, do something differently. And that can be empowering for some kids. It's also a way to enhance communication with you, the provider, and enhance communication within the family. Because what we're going to present in the family session, I'm skipping ahead a little bit, is this will be a chance for parents to have shared language around suicide risk and emotional distress. So that parents can ask kids, I see you're crying right now. I see you're really upset. Can you share with me, where are you on your emotions thermometer? If the kid says, out of 5, I'm upset about physics test, the parent knows, oh, they're having a really bad day, but they're not at risk for suicide. Versus the kid says, I'm at a 9. Dad now knows now's not the time to go out and run some errands. My son needs me. Let me check in. Let me help him use his safety plan. What do we need to do to help you stay out of the hospital? This can be really empowering for parents who feel like they're always walking on eggshells, or they feel like they don't know what their teen is feeling and they don't know what to do. Because what we're going to be discussing is, when you get a certain number, how does that translate to the parent's response? What response is going to be beneficial in helping them to regulate their emotions back down to towards a 0? Now we're going to get to the kind of culmination of the first session. That initial session is our personal action plan for coping. You hear, or you see that I'm not saying safety plan. And the reason for that is I've seen so much controversy among youth, among teens, with the term safety plan, because so many people who come to me have 2 or 3 safety plans, one from the emergency room, one from the school counselor, one from the inpatient unit, and they all say it's useless and they've never used it and it's not helpful. And whenever they say that, I make a joke. And I said, we're going to play a game. I've never met you before. I've never seen your safety plan before, but I'm about to tell you what's on your safety plan. And I want to see if I can get 2 of the 3 right. And I almost always do. Because what I say is, on your safety plan, it's watching Netflix, listening to music, and going for a walk. And I say this half as a joke, half seriously, and with genuine frustration. Because what I've seen so many times is I've seen providers treat safety plans as documentation that's covering their butts in terms of liability. And what they do is they hand a team a safety plan. They tell them what to go on the safety plan, and they document it in the chart as safety plan's done, suicide risk has been addressed. That's the worst possible way to do a safety plan because it's not tailored to the needs. We don't know if it leverages their strengths. We don't know if it's even logistically feasible in the settings in which they experience suicidality. And we have no buy-in, we have no troubleshooting, we have really no commitment to using the safety plan. And it's an invalidating experience that makes it harder for people like me to do my job because I can't now use the word safety plan because it's already been misapplied by other providers. And so what I do instead is I say coping plan, personal plan, any other language you want to use, that's a safety plan. And again, building hope is a key piece of this. I do not treat this as, documentation to cover, any liability on my end or whatever. I treat this as this is a kid that can now stay safe and come back to me for care. It is designed to build hope. It's designed to empower the youth to feel like there are other options other than self-harm. They can practice this, they can try this. It can be a taste of what evidence-based practice can look like for them in having that symptom remission. This is kind of our standard safety plan. We have our warning signs, what I can do to stay safe, what I can think to stay safe, who I can talk to. The National Suicide Prevention Hotline, 988, and kind of any emergency protocol that we want to put in place. You can customize this. This is our colleagues at Duke. They have a lot more hotlines on theirs. That works for them. They added reasons for living to their safety plan. They added limiting access to means. That system works for them. I encourage you to have a safety plan that works for your system and your setting. The idea behind each of the categories on the safety plan actually really matters in helping the youth to understand the nuances. For example, warning signs. There are two categories to warning signs. There's internal warning signs and there's external warning signs. Internal is what only you can notice. Your heart's beating fast. You have certain thoughts. You're feeling dizzy, sweaty, whatever it is. External are warning signs that other people can notice. Your friends can see. Your parents can see. So they know you need help and support. You're going to have a combination of the two. Warning signs are taken directly from the emotions thermometer. And something I should note is you can leverage every single piece of safety A to cascade into the next step. Strengths informs the emotions thermometer because we now know what 0 is. They love to play soccer. Well, is playing soccer 0 on the emotions thermometer? Gets that ball rolling. Warning signs. We already filled that out from the boiling point. So it's copying and pasting information, saving time, streamlining it, making it a more efficient therapeutic assessment. These are not separate tasks with no overlap that are just creating, an extra half hour for you. They're actually designed to make things more accessible for you and for the youth. Next is what I can do to stay safe. This is the one where I see people really struggle. And we want to, again, draw from personal strengths. We want to draw from the feelings thermometer. We want to ask, what have they done in the past that's been helpful? What's critically important about this is that it's customized to setting. If a teen is, for example, frequently suicidal at school, we need to have this customized to school. We need to talk about what they have access to at school. So if their go-to is playing on their phone, but they don't have phone access at school, that's a complete mismatch on your safety plan. And so we need to be mindful of what's being recommended they have access to and varies based on the setting. Similar to warning signs, we have two categories: things you can do by yourself, things you can do with others. We want to mix it both. We want to discuss troubleshooting. What could go wrong? What do we need help with? Where people really get stuck is that they say, oh, I can talk to someone. Talking to someone does not go what on you can do. Because as I mentioned, a later point is, who can I talk to? So it's wasting a slot on your safety plan to have talking to someone on what I can do to stay safe. And I just want to note that is a very common pitfall. Next is what I can think to stay safe. This is identifying thoughts that are specific to the suicidal thought. This is, again, a huge stumbling block that I see for people. Because they'll have like inspirational quotes like, oh, one day everything will be better, or just kind of platitudes that drive kids crazy. So what I say, What is that thought that's driving your suicidality? What is that thought that you get stuck? What is that thought that repeats in your mind over and over? Okay, we've identified it. Now, what has been helpful when you have that thought? What have people said to you? What have you said to yourself? What's been effective? And now, magically, it's customized to the thought that maybe led to a suicide attempt, or the thoughts that perpetuating the self-harm. And so it's having that tailored zero-in approach that makes this much more specific and where people really get stuck. Who I can talk to, pretty straightforward, a protective adult. Everyone says, what if they want to put a peer on the safety plan? My response is totally fine for an emotions thermometer score of 5 or below. Anything above 5, we want a protective adult. The logic that I have for this is a few things. Sometimes at a lower level of distress, a peer really is the best person for them to hang out with. They can play video games, watch Netflix, do whatever they want. It's a distraction. It helps them to have fun, and then maybe that regulates their emotion. If that doesn't work, if emotions continue to escalate, we want a protective adult involved. I give 2 reasons for that. One, I want to make sure the youth gets help from someone who's equipped to provide help. An adult should be that person. A peer is not. Next, it's not fair to a friend, a peer, for them to support you if you're at higher than a 5. They do not have suicide prevention training. I'm sure they want to do their best, but you need more than that at this time. That's the 2 kind of pronged rationale that I provide in order to navigate any concerns or confusion about where does a friend go on this. The takeaway points from a safety plan: is it under their control? Is it safe? What's the goal of using this activity? Can they actually feasibly use the skill in this setting? Are there any barriers to reaching the safe adults? The joke that I always give that's actually true, it's insane, is I had a teen say to me they listed their aunt on their safety plan. I said, wonderful. Where does your aunt live? And she said, Australia. So wonderful. I'm so glad that your aunt is supportive, but we have a bit of a time zone difference to account for. Making sure that kind of logistical concerns are addressed. Many times teens forget that because of their age. And this can be a chance for you to help them see any gaps in their plan. When we get here, I always say that I want to share this with the caregiver during our family session. So empowering the youth to get prepared for that and to have a discussion about what pieces do they want to share, what do they maybe not feel so comfortable sharing, and helping them feel that this is a conversation and decision we make together. Wrapping up the youth session and the end is a conversation on safe settings. So making sure that the environment is safe, limiting access to means, giving psychoeducation on substance use, and how that relates to emotion dysregulation and impulsivity around suicide. We then want to get a commitment to using the personal plan, working with them to see, is this feasible? Is this realistic? And if not, let's talk about that. And there are times where I've done my therapeutic intervention and teens have said this, I'm sorry, this is not realistic for me. I cannot stay safe. And I say, thank you for telling me. I really appreciate the honesty. Let's talk about what you need to stay safe. Sometimes we can get there, other times we haven't, and we need to go with the higher level of care. And so it's a really nice way to, after you've built rapport, to capitalize on that rapport, to have an open conversation about what the teen needs to make sure they can stay out of the hospital. So I'm going to pause, gave quite a lot of information. This is only part 1 of the first half because we're about to go over the parent and caregiver component of safety A and the family component of safety A probably in the next 15 minutes. And then I'm going to switch over to the full 12-week model of safety. But I want to pause for a second. Does anyone have any questions about anything that's been covered so far that I can clarify? Okay, I will keep going. So after we meet with the youth one-on-one, you mean with the caregiver one? I use parent and caregiver interchangeably. When I use those terms, I mean anyone who's a protective adult. It can be grandmother, aunt, uncle, whoever. Um, Similar to time with the youth, we orient them to who we are, what our service is, what our goal is. We set our agenda. Again, like with the youth, we have shared power, shared decision making, a collaborative approach to care. We then also do strengths with the caregiver, strengths about the youth, strengths about the family, a conversation about safe settings, and preparing for the family session. We do an agenda setting because many times parents, justly so, are dysregulated, upset, overwhelmed, and concerned. And so we want to provide structure. We want to provide a framework for time limits and also what's in the scope of our time together today. All of that being said, we still lead with that trauma-informed lens. Because as I mentioned at the start of our time together, navigating this is a trauma for parents. Not could be a trauma. Having your child try to kill themselves is traumatic. This is a fact. And so recognizing that their emotional responses could be a trauma response. Now I want to underline this and circle this because this is a big part of the safety approach. So understanding when you have an angry parent, a frustrated parent, a difficult, combative, manipulative parent, whatever labels you currently use, ask yourself, could this be a trauma response? Is that what you're getting? And if so, how can I respond differently, more empathically, more collaboratively to empower them as they navigate this trauma? That's the key part of the safety approach. And so we lead by listing strengths, reminding parents why they're here, what they love about their child, even if it feels distant. This changes the tenor of the session. Many parents are scared, angry, frustrated. It can be a chance to recenter, refocus. We're all on the same team. It's also a great chance to, as you set the agenda, ask parents how they're doing. There's so many parents who said to me, my God, I've been in the mental health care system for weeks. You're the first person who asked me how I am. It can be a really powerful way to set the agenda and validate the fact that parents have feelings too. Parents have emotions around what's going on. And it's our job to support the family because parents are a big part in making sure the youth stay safe. We then have a conversation on safe settings. We want the home environment to be a safe one. And the way we do this is kind of multi-step. We have many different kind of tools in our toolkit to pull from. Does a parent need psychoeducation and warning signs? Are they taking all of this seriously, or do they say it's a cry for attention, a cry for help? How are they doing in terms of limiting access to means? Are they there for their kid, or are they out and about all day long with their suicidal team home alone? What does the substance use situation look like? When I worked at UCLA, I had parents who bought their kids cannabis products for their own use. What does this look like in the home? Are parents on board with the idea of supporting the youth and using their safety plan? I've had parents say to me, why are you even talking to me right now? My kid's the one who's mentally ill, not me. I'm fine. I'm good. Why are you talking to me? Do they understand they're an active player in all of this? And then having a conversation on emergency protocol. Are we all on the same page about, God forbid, there's another suicidal crisis? How can you keep your child safe? All of these are things you can pull from because parents present dramatically differently. You'll have a parent who knows all about warning signs, has made their home unbelievably secure, but has missed the boat about monitoring and really needs a conversation about that. Other parents have, blind spots with lethal means restriction. That's a very common one. And so having conversations about all of this, customized and tailored to the parent's presentation. Just having conversation on means restriction changes behavior. We know this. We've seen studies on this. Giving them education, psychoeducation, why this is important. The language that I like to use is it creates time. Time saves lives. And the way it saves lives is I like to give a scenario of a teen who likes to overdose on her mother's sleeping pills. We have scenario one, teen's home alone, has a suicidal crisis, goes into mom's bedroom, sees the sleeping pills, takes the pills, makes a suicide attempt. That's scenario one. Scenario two is the same, except the sleeping pills have been secured. Teen has an emotional crisis, goes into mom's room looking for sleeping pills, can't find the pills. Now is searching for the pills. Now is switching the means of self-harm and suicide. During that search, time occurs. And when time occurs, different things can happen. One, emotions can come down with the passage of time. We all know how that's how this works. Help can arrive. Parent can come home early. They can get a text message, a phone call from a friend. They can start to use coping skills. They can start to think about the situation differently. Suicide can be averted with the creation of time. And so this is why I give this psychoeducation, is that it can be incredibly powerful to have an extra 5-10 minutes to make that difference in safety. Again, we see the parents are more likely to act when they're educated. Safety is an ongoing discussion. It's not a one and done. Kids can accidentally bring something home, something's brought into the house. I once had a grandmother who accidentally bought a giant bottle of Advil from Costco and didn't realize that wouldn't probably be something good to be laying around the house. What's important is that we have a conversation about means, as you saw with the youth one-on-one and with the parent one-on-one, because they each have different, what's the way I would say it? They each have, I'd say, different access kind of understandings. And what I mean by that is I've had so many teens who are hiding things from their parents. And if this was only a conversation with the parents, we would have missed that entirely. And there are often items in the home that only parents know about, like firearms, for example, is a common one. The teen may not know about, but we want to discuss restricting access to them. So because of that, this is always a conversation you have alone. You always have this conversation with parent alone, teen alone, and then we're going to have this as a family all together, but we're not there yet. We then have a conversation about what protective monitoring in the home looks like. We don't want the monitoring itself to be a source of stress because we all met the helicopter parents. And we have a conversation about how can monitoring be effective when used appropriately. Conversation about substance use in the home, parents' views on substance use and what's okay and what's not okay. We have a checklist, a safe settings checklist that can be really helpful. We go through things like our firearms in the home, medications in the home, other self-harm methods. Does the caregiver understand the severity of the situation? They're willing to help the kid get care. We're on the same page about the safety plan, and caregivers possess the kind of cognitive abilities to support treatment at this time. Takeaway points is that we need time for parents to express their emotions openly and honestly so they can be coached, if needed, to act more effectively in the family session. Many times, parents just need a good 10 minutes to vent, and that would not be appropriate in front of the teen. It would be very damaging. And it can be a chance to provide that coaching, that support, even guidance on what type of behavior is appropriate. We're also going to ask the parents to share the strengths that they listed. So we want to give some coaching on what is an appropriate strength. I've had parents very seriously say, oh, he's a wonderful son. He's a wonderful big brother, except, when he's being a little brat. And if I were to ask them to share that with their teen, I'd say we're going to need to leave that last part off in order for this to be an effective situation for your team. So providing that coaching and support and feedback is critical, because that then brings us to our family together. This is the culmination of safety, the first session. This is the key opportunity to increase family support and positive interaction. It's a chance for the parent to share strengths about the youth, strengths about the family, and for the teen to do the same. It's a chance for the teen to share their safety plan with their parent and ask and have a conversation on how the parent can support the use of the safety plan. Let's practice discussing the implementation together, talk about any barriers, and having a commitment to next steps and using the plan. Schedule the next session. Make sure we're all on the same page about what does lethal means restriction look like in the home. There are no surprises that the knives are going to be locked up. We have an open conversation about that, and we discuss any changes that needs to happen in the home to promote safety to ensure a next session happens. So after this, after day one, it's an opportunity if they get lost to care for some reason. Part of the safety approach is follow-up emails, phone calls, even a postcard if needed, in order to make sure that they stay in contact with evidence-based practice. So I gave you a 6-hour training in the span of about 45 minutes. I want to emphasize again, this is not meant to be comprehensive because you saw I skimmed over a little bit of things. Part of the master training is we have lots of videos for you all. And so I'm going to let democracy occur, which I realize is a complete mistake with over 50 people. We're just going to do it just for fun. I'd love it for folks to type in the chat which video you'd like me to show. Our options are strengths, where we see the youth list strengths about themselves and the family. We see the emotions thermometer. We see the provider facilitate the completion of the emotions thermometer. We can see safety plan, which is the provider facilitating the youth creating a safety plan. We can see a 5-minute example of a parent session, and we can see a 5-minute example of the family all together session. So I'm going to sit back and let democracy occur as we vote, and I will then show a video based on our votes.
Oh, man, it's kind of all over the place.
It really
Let's see.
is. I'm seeing a lot of family and safety plan. Sadie, you're gonna have to be like the tiebreaker with me to like make a decision. I am leaning towards safety plan.
Safety. Yeah, I'm thinking it's the safety plan is going to be the winner.
Okay, let's watch the safety plan. It's gonna be about a 5-minute video, and then I'll open things up for questions. This is what I love is I queue up all the videos ahead of time, but because it's on box, what happens is that it signs me out. So everything's queued up, but then I need to sign back in. So give me 1 second, everyone. Okay. So we can watch the first 5 minutes or so, and then we'll switch to our 12-week safety program. And just for the sake of you guys all knowing, so in this video, you're going to see Dr. Joan Sarno. She is the real-life developer of Safety A real-life clinical psychologist and researcher at UCLA. You're also going to see an actress. She is not a real patient. This is the question I get time and time again is like, did you record a session? No, we didn't record a session and they're just showing it to you all. We hired an actress for this role play. So you're not about to see a real patient. And I will go ahead and show this.
Okay, so now let's see if we can come up with a plan for helping you at times when your emotions are starting to shoot up like that. So let's start with remembering what the warning signs were that we got on the thermometer here, or when your temperature was starting to shoot up into the danger zone.
Was feeling overwhelmed and
Good job.
like what was happening or how I was feeling.
Well, what would be the signs that you might experience that you're about to move into a danger zone for yourself, that you might be getting to a point where your emotions would be so intense that it would be hard for you to stay safe and remember that you do want to live and that you have things to live for?
Uh, I would say like I guess when the fight started to break out, so when it started to get really loud and everyone got aggressive and crazy.
You know, I just have to tell you that we have to add something to the strengths. You are a really observant girl.
Thank you.
You know, you were able to identify that it was really the fighting and the loudness
Mhm.
that made you feel more overwhelmed.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah,
That's true.
very good observer. It's a real strength.
Mhm.
Make you a good writer.
I do like writing.
You do.
Yeah, creative writing. Mostly.
Do you do creative writing?
Not like often, just sometimes in class, we'll get to do like little creative writing assignments and I like those.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Is that something you're gonna do something with in the future, maybe?
I've never thought about it. Maybe, but I don't know.
So you think you might? Think
Maybe,
about it.
maybe.
And then there's always chef.
Yeah, there's always this.
Yeah, there's always the chef skills. Okay, all right, fantastic. Okay, is there anything else that's a sign for you that you're heading up into that danger zone?
I guess my anxiety gets in the way and I start to kind of feel like I don't have control of the situation.
So you feel anxious
Yeah.
and out of control. The way you just moved your hands, it made me think maybe you get a little shaky. Is that true too?
Yeah, I guess.
Do you?
Yeah.
Is your heartbeat fast or anything like that?
Maybe a little bit. I don't notice it too much if
Mhm.
it does, but
Okay, this is shakiness.
yeah,
Or tense feeling in your body?
yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
Tense, okay, so let's add that to reactions, shaky, tense. All right, so when you get those feelings, like what happened that other night, what can you do to stay safe? So this is gonna be your plan for staying safe. And then if you do shoot up into the danger zone, which I hate to tell you, but it's probably gonna happen again. It happens to all of us.
Mhm.
And this is gonna be your plan for pulling yourself down. And we're gonna start here. But, you know, we talked about how when people feel depressions like you felt, therapy sometimes help.
Mhm.
With time and with therapy, you're gonna be able to come up with an even better safety plan than we're gonna come up with today. So this is just a beginning.
Okay.
Okay, so you did do something to stay safe at the party. What was it?
I grabbed my friend Sophia and told her to take me home.
Hmm. Did that work?
I mean, once I got home and was by myself, I definitely, like, I didn't feel good, no, but it helped to get away from what I was feeling at the party at
Mhm.
least, just to get me away from that.
So you felt safer when you were with
Yeah,
Sophia than you did at the party.
yeah,
So you might have even gone down on there on the ride home?
yeah, I guess,
Did you? Maybe from an 8.5, because you said you were 8.5 to an 8.25
maybe.
or an
yeah,
8?
Yeah,
Do you remember being in the car with her?
yeah, a little bit. We just got in the car and then I just told her like how there's a fight and I mean, I guess it felt good at the moment, just because it didn't feel as intense as it did when the guys were fighting,
Mhm.
because I wasn't right next to them anymore. But then once I was by myself, I just kind of felt like overwhelmed again.
So we know that when you're up too high, being alone is not a good idea, sounds like.
Yeah.
Especially now.
Yeah.
Right? With time, you may get stronger at being able to bring yourself down. But it sounds like it's really a good idea to have someone like Sophia around. So should we put her on there? You, yourself? Let's you write that safety plan. Okay. Are there other people we could put on that safety plan to keep you safe? Because being alone, we decided is not a good idea when your emotions are that high.
I don't know. Maybe, I mean, I could put another friend I have,
Mhm.
put her name, I guess.
Well, before you put it, tell me about the friend.
She's just she's my friend Phoebe that we hang out, all three of us girls. She's Sophia I probably hang out with more, but she's my other like
Mhm.
close friend, I'd say.
So Was Phoebe the one that told you about the cutting, or was that someone else?
She was the one.
She was the one. So is she a good person to have on there, do you think?
I guess not, I guess in that sense. I just can't really think of any other people. I mean, I don't
Well,
really
you
hang out.
put
with
her
people.
on there,
Yeah,
but maybe with a little sign to remind yourself.
yeah, like maybe it's.
That
not-
you don't want to cut. Okay, anyone else you want to put in there?
I'd say my mom, but I don't wanna, I feel like I don't want her to be more worried
Mm-hmm.
than she probably already is. But
So you don't want to worry your mom, but how about if you and your mom, you said, hey, mom, let's make something really great for dinner.
yeah,
Would that work? Would that be okay?
yeah,
That probably wouldn't worry her, would it?
no. I guess, yeah.
So you might, just like you're putting a little star by Phoebe to
Mhm.
remind yourself that, and maybe even write down there, Phoebe, but remember, don't cut.
Remember.
I'll pause us there. So what I really, oh, I just realized my video's off. 1 second. What I really love about that video is that it's a very dynamic safety plan. Is that it's not just fill out all these forms. It is not just fill out all these categories. It's, well, as you list people, what are they good for? Is Phoebe someone who helps you to stay safe, or does she encourage cutting? When you list your dad on the safety plan, is he someone that, he's really good at talking about his feelings, or is he someone that, hey, dad, we should just go on a run? That's how dad goes on the safety plan. So really getting in those details of what would be useful on the safety plan, in what setting, in what context, really getting into that additional detail. So that brings us to the end of the Safety A, which again is session 1 of the 12-week safety program. I'm about to give you the overview in the second half about the rest of the sessions. Any questions about session 1, Safety A, which again is a standalone intervention? Happy to elaborate on it. Okay, so I'll go ahead and share my screen. Welcome to safety. So safety, again, for the sake of terminology, is I'm now referring to the 12-week program. This has been tested, again, ages youth 12 to 17 has been where our randomized controlled trials have been. This is designed for more acute youth. So Safety A is designed for just general kind of therapeutic assessment. I do it every single day here as my intake assessment at the Aspire Center. Safety is designed, I call it almost like a mini personalized like dose of an IOP, because again, it's 12 weeks, an hour of individual therapy, an hour of parent therapy, and then time with the family all together for a family session. Typically, it's done in a 2-therapist model, which can be challenging for implementation reasons. It can be done with one person, but that's almost like 3 hours of sessions per case a week, which can be a lot. And so if you were to get trained in the 9-hour training of safety, a big part of that is discussing implementation and feasibility, because we want to make sure it's an intervention that can be sustainable and effective in your care setting. So this is I find a really nice slide, and just in terms of orienting us to when I give you the alphabet soup of safety A, safety B, and safety C, what on earth am I talking about? So safety A, again, is referred to the Family Intervention for Suicide Prevention. It's session 1 of safety. It is one session, 20 to 45 minutes. That's a standalone intervention. If for some reason the kind of like 12-week model is not appropriate, we can do safety B. If for some reason they're not going to stay with you, you're kind of doing a care linkage approach. Safety B is added to safety A with an emphasis on stabilization, about 5 or 6 sessions. Safety C, again, in the trials, in the scientific trials, is a 12-week intervention. It can be extended up to 20 sessions. It can be 3 months of interventions. It's a very intensive approach. It was designed specifically for youth who have ongoing non-suicidal self-injury or a history of suicide attempts. It is not meant to be just youth who are depressed or have kind of fleeting thoughts of death. That would be too high of a level of care for them. And so just want to note the distinction. I'll be talking about safety C, but again, I'll just be referring to it as safety for the rest of today. So I talked about the age range. I talk about the implementation. It's a two-therapist model. The goal is very similar to safety A. It's about linkage to care, you or someone else. And it's about a really tailored approach using different CBT and DBT techniques to create a customized treatment plan. And we have different phases of safety. The first is the treatment planning phase. Then we have the skills acquisition phase where they're learning new skills. Then we have the consolidation, relapse prevention, and discharge phases. So making sure that they understand the care, it's tailored to them, and that they're able to then effectively discharge safely once the suicide risk has passed. So a lot of goals, similar to safety A, there are certain mechanisms of action, kind of pathways of effectiveness that we're aiming for. I'm going to read off a few of them, but again, if you want to read more, all of this we write extensively about on our ASAP Center website. All of this is available in terms of articles. So the idea is we really want to have that strengthening that relationship with youth and caregivers to continue that safety planning, that continue that refinement of the safety plan. A safety plan is a living document. It's not you did safety A and now you're done. It is I come back to what I regularly do the safety program. I come back to the safety plan almost every other week. I say, you've been learning stuff, you've been getting better. What do we need to change? What do we need to update? What should go? What should be added? So it's constantly updated. We want this to be an ongoing commitment to safety, an ongoing discussion of how we can support the teen in staying safe from self-harm urges. We want to be able to have a consistent, comfortable commitment to monitoring from parents, but also limiting access to means for the kid. If you're a DBTer like me, you'll recognize the next one, which is identifying reasons for living to build your life worth living. To really help teens feel like there are aspects of life that get them excited, that are protective against thoughts of suicide. We do this through that family approach, strengthening relations between caregivers and teens, and helping teens feel like even if an acute crisis comes up, the safety model gives a concrete way to navigate that crisis in an effective way. And then during that discharge phase, making sure we're collaborative in a follow-up plan and being able to link to follow-up care and services. So as we know, safety A is the first session. Then we see, does care linkage need to happen between us? And do we need to have care linkage with the community too? And then how do we help them stabilize? And how do we help them feel that they're able to then move on to maybe a lower level of care after they've received the safety intervention? You already know the answer to this one because I just went over it. The goal in session 1 is increasing hope, reasons for living, safety planning, and protective response. So Victoria, I see, can you direct me how to obtain the book? We do not have a book. We have book chapters and we have articles. I'm actually going to take a second, if it would be helpful, just to show you where all of that lives, so people can follow up on that. I'm just going to show you the ASAP Center website. So I just typed in asapnctsn.org. This is our website, and you would go to what we do, and you would go to treatment for suicide, and you would see all of our interventions. You see safety A here, and you see safety here. And we click on safety A, gives you an overview of what safety A is, and then this is all of the resources. We've got papers, we've got book chapters, we have some podcasts, we have some videos, and it details all of the different settings in which we've delivered the safety interventions. Okay, thank you for asking that. Alrighty. So session 1 is to help the teen feel comfortable coming back and feel safe between sessions. And so we've done that in session 1. Step 2 is, do we need to schedule them? Do we need to refer them out, or do we need to keep them in care and make sure they're able to stay with us maybe for a little bit of a longer term situation? Do we need to address any treatment barriers that would get in the way of meaningful engagement? And if so, would we need to activate that kind of caring contact to get them back into care, as I discussed? So stabilization is building on all of that, but also a very customized case conceptualization through something called a cognitive behavioral fit analysis that I'm going to present on in a little bit. Because that's really the core of the safety 12-week one, because we need to have a customized treatment plan. We may sometimes need linkage calls and care and contacts in order to make sure that they stay in care and they're able to successfully complete the delivery of care. If you need to, if we're doing safety B, this is like the only slide on safety B, it'll be really kind of cutting down on some of the additional interventions with the real emphasis on keeping them safe during the transition to care. We'll still do a fit analysis, but we'll maybe pick and choose certain interventions to capitalize on, or focus on, in a kind of more imminent safety focus sort of way. So what is this fit analysis I keep talking about? So this is session 2. We just spent an hour on session 1. Session 2 is much, much shorter, I promise. Session 2 is the fit analysis. The idea behind this is drawing from a CBT perspective, understanding that from a CBT framework, there are certain processes and reactions that contribute to suicide attempt risk. Our job is to understand those. At the same time, we also need to be aware of the fact that there are multiple determinants of suicidal behavior. It is not just driven by depression. It is not just driven by a breakup. It is not just driven by a failed physics test. It is driven by a multi-layer, multi-system approach. And we need to organize that. And so we organize that with a fit analysis, because life is ever changing, ever flowing, new stressors pop up. We need to update and refine the fit analysis as we do treatment, so that we can make sure that our conceptualization of the case isn't from, 4 weeks ago. So the way we create a fit analysis is by doing a chain analysis. And I will say the one complaint I have about safety is these two terms, because they sound so similar, is people sometimes get confused between fit and chain analysis. So a chain analysis is the intervention. The fit analysis is the case conceptualization. So what we do in our fit analysis is, after we deliver the chain analysis, which I'll go through in a second, we're able to take a look at what are those points of intervention. What do we need to focus on in terms of next steps? We include things, excuse me, we include things like environmental factors, like family conflict, like parent psychiatric symptoms, peers, and the community. And we look at the interaction between the two as well. Finally, the main event, the fit analysis. So this is an example of a fit analysis. The shape of the boxes matter. So on the left, we have squares. The squares are what sustain, drive, contribute to suicidality. These are the factors that are causing distress. In this example of a fit analysis, this example case has depression and sleep problems, has conflicts at home, has a history of bullying with ongoing reminders, and is in a new school with not many friends. All the way on the right, we see a dark circle, a bolded circle around the words took pills. That's the suicide attempt. In between the squares and the bolded circle, we have lines and other circles, some with dots. This is the progression of suicidality. And so in this specific example, we have these contributing factors on the left, and we have a prompting event. The prompting event was stressful social interactions. This teen saw a post on social media from a girl who was bullying her, and she had an awkward moment with a peer at school. The dotted circles connected to this prompting event with a line saying, "It's so unfair she's happy after all she's did." These are the thoughts. Why am I so weird? Who will ever like me? Thoughts related to the prompting event. Next, on the right, we have another circle, the next progression of our fit analysis. We identify emotions. We identify secondary thoughts. These are repetitive negative thoughts, feeling sad, ashamed. The thought, I make my mom miserable because I'm dumb. I'm a complete failure as a person. The next step in the chain is access to lethal means. The access is they have access. They were home alone, absence of protective monitoring, saw the pills on the counter. There was no protective factor from the access to the ability to make a suicide attempt. Suicide attempt occurred. And so this is done after a chain analysis, which is my next few slides. And you present this openly to the teen and to the family. And you say, did I get my understanding right? Or is there something I'm missing? Any of these arrows are points of intervention. Any of these boxes are things we can change. They are skills I can teach you to impact this so that if a similar situation occurs again, we can go down a different path. We can break the chain of events and help you to feel like you're not locked into this. Again, we update this regularly. This is a real life example of writing this down on, a yellow notepad of what this can look like. For a chain analysis, I usually like to do the most recent suicidal event or self-harm event, or the one that's really bringing them to care with me. And it's a chance for us to have shared expertise on where do we need to intervene, where do we need to have things go differently in the future. This is the chain analysis. So it's really looking step by step in slow motion, moment by moment, what happened. And is looking at the links between thoughts and behaviors. And we want to look at things like vulnerability factors, like sleep, prompting events that cause the acute stressor, any situational environmental drivers like school and home peers, any consistent behavioral patterns or thought patterns, any social factors, and then the consequences of the behavior that they had. And so I think I have a diagram of it. Do I? I actually don't have a diagram. That's odd. But the way that I usually like to do this one is I like to start first thing in the morning. I like to let's do an emotional thermometer check-in. Where were you when you first opened your eyes? Were you started the day at a 10 out of 10 and you started as a crisis? Or did you maybe start like a 1 or a 2 and it wasn't until you got to school that you had that spike in emotional distress. It's helpful to understand, when did things emerge? When did things get to the boiling point? When did things get unsafe? When do we need to be using coping skills? When do we need to use our safety plan? And we do this with a lot of Socratic questioning. I'm going to use a CBT term right there. And so we ask things like, what were you thinking? When did you decide to hurt yourself? What was going through your mind? Did you have any thoughts? Did you have any images? What was the last thought you had? What were you feeling? What were the intensities of feelings? Where were you on the emotions thermometer? What were you noticing in your body? Can we look at these links and then say to ourselves, this is what could change? This lasts sometimes a whole session. This can last a full 45 minutes. And an important piece is regularly monitoring the use current emotional response to doing a chain analysis. Many times teens will become tearful and upset. And that's why it's important to make sure the level of distress is okay and you're able to help them self-regulate afterwards. There have been times when chain analyses can be too dysregulated. We take a break, we pause, we use our safety plan, we use our coping skills, and we, in real time, show what it's like to regulate our emotions. And that can be a powerful and effective approach as well. We also have a parent chain analysis, because if you remember, in addition to individual therapy, we also have individual time with the parents. And so we do a chain analysis from the parent perspective. How do we create a safety plan, a parent safety plan? How do we have this from the parent's perspective so it doesn't occur again? How do parents respond when they can watch the chain analysis of the chain of events occur in real time? How do they respond when their own emotions start to elevate or get escalated? And the answer to that is we create a parent safety plan. A parent safety plan is for their own emotional regulation. I'm doing safety with a family right now. And I had a full 45-minute session with a mother who is getting ready for spring break. And she said, Lucas, I'm going to be home with my suicidal daughter for a week. What do I do? And we just spent 45 minutes on what she's going to do and what she's going to have as her safety plan, how she's going to keep her own emotions in check, how is she going to do self-care, who is she going to reach out to, how is she going to have support, all of that. That's a key part of the safety 12-week approach. Okay, I'd say the next step, another key heart piece of the safety safety program, is the safety pyramid. I love the safety pyramid. It is such a nice way to present to both the teens and the parents how we conceptualize their care. We want to check in with them at each of these levels. The foundation is safe settings. Are they in an environment that's safe? Access to substances, access to firearms, anything that could be dangerous in the environment. Have we established safe settings? Next up is safe people. In a safe setting, are they around safe people? Or are they around people that are triggering, emotionally abusive, upsetting to them? Which people are they around? Next are activities and actions. Are their day-to-day actions safe? Are they playing video games, playing soccer, or are they out smoking with friends? Different types of activities. The thoughts that they have. If we're even in a safe setting around safe people doing safe things, we can have unsafe thoughts. Let's check in with the thoughts. What do we need to do in terms of any cognitive distortions? And finally, stress reactions. Even if we have safe settings, safe people, safe actions, safe thoughts, what if our gut response to a stressor is to cut? What if our gut response to a stressor is to take a bottle of Tylenol? That's an unsafe stress reaction. Every single point on the safety pyramid is a point of intervention. And it's a way to create a customized, tailored treatment plan. And lots of questions lots of queries for every single one of these that I just do not have time to go over today, but it's how we kind of flesh out the case conceptualization through the safety pyramid. We fill this in for each category. What is safe? What is unsafe? And we share this with the parent and the family. This is what's going well. This is what's not going well. How do we address this? The way we address this is with all of the interventions we have as part of the 12-week safety program. There are a lot, and they map exactly onto each of the levels of the safety pyramid. Let's just pick one together. So let's say we're struggling with the people one. If I look on the left, that's the youth column. We would promote safe social connections. We'd build social support. We'd talk to about support seeking strategies. We discuss social skills. Parents, though, need to learn the same skills. And so parents would learn how to promote safe social connection. They learn how to listen and validate their teens. They learn how to support and use effective communication skills themselves. And we really want to make sure the parents are engaged in self-care and wellness so that they don't burn out and they have their own parent safety plan. That's just an example. That content could last 2 or 3 weeks to address that and really kind of zero in on that layer of the safety pyramid. How this all works, I'm a visual person. How this all works is that we have our assessment data, from Safety A. We have our chain analysis data on kind of risk conceptualization. We then have our safety pyramid, which is looking at the different layers of risk and protective factors. Then most importantly, we have the goals from the youth, goals from the parents. We then combine all of that into a fit analysis and a treatment plan done collaboratively. We do this together. We create the diagram. We share this with the family and have an open discussion. Yes, Amber. So what's really nice is these graphics are actually in our journal articles. So for example, all the safety graphics, they are on, I think it's the 2015 Sarno RCT, randomized controlled trial study. And it will just be at the end of the article. And that's where the safety pyramid is, for example. And so each of these articles that we have on our website have these resources. They're usually in kind of like the appendix section, and when they talk about how to use the interventions. So what was I saying? Yeah, so basically we use all of this data to create the tailored safe fit analysis that we share with the family and we discuss with them on a regular basis. Just some things to consider is we always want to have on our radar any co-occurring mental health and life problems, any other kind of linkage to psychiatric care, or getting additional services. For example, I'll have parents who maybe are in need of couples counseling, and that's something that we want to make sure they get as their teen is receiving the safety intervention in order to make sure that treatment is as effective as possible. The big underlining takeaway, if there's anything I want you all to take from today, is this next bullet point. And I'm just going to read it because it makes me so happy about the importance of this one, is assessment is continuous. Youth and family response is monitored at all sessions, and treatment strategies are adjusted to optimize outcomes. That is the big takeaway. That we are not stagnant. We're not some manualized treatment. It's like on week 2, we do this handout. Here you go. Let's do this together. It is entirely tailored to the family's presentation on an ongoing basis. All sessions must contain some intervention and skill building as well as some assessment outcomes. Otherwise, you're just doing talk therapy. You're not doing evidence-based care. And so those are the big takeaways, is that if you're doing safety, you're assessing, and you're delivering an intervention. Those two are needed in order to kind of move things forward. A typical agenda in the way that I structure Safety A is with the youth. I always check in about any reactions or feelings about the last session. I check for any suicidal self-harm urges since the last sessions. I review any assigned homework or practice, which we assign for every session. I identify any issues that the youth wants to address, and I set the agenda collaboratively. We do follow the DBT hierarchy of treatment targets, which is in a session, you will always first target life-threatening behavior, therapy-threatening behavior, quality of life-threatening behavior. So if a teen comes in and is like, I want to talk to you about my new boyfriend, but you find out she's been cutting nonstop since the last session, you can't get to the new boyfriend unless you address the cut. And that's just the way that we order things in the safety approach. Parent sessions, very similar. Any reactions or feelings from the last session, any self-harm urges, any concerns the parent has, how is the parent doing? Kind of an important one. And then setting the agenda based on anything we need to touch base on. The family session, we start with an intervention called Thanks Notes, which I have a slide on in a little bit. A capsule summary, which the teen updates the parent on what's been discussed. And then skills training. This is my favorite part of all of safety. It's learning a new skill and practicing the new skill. Practicing in real time what the skill looks like in the family session so they can then practice it over the upcoming week. So if you're crazy like me and you like everything mapped out, you're going to love this next one because this shows you all of the interventions by session in the safety approach. And I just don't have time to go through all of them. But as you can see, it kind of takes us through what are these treatment targets, what heading of treatment are we in, what phase of treatment are we in, what are we kind of assigning as practice between sessions? Is it with the youth? Is it the parent? Is it the family all together? This is why you're trying to see it's a 9-hour training. There's a lot there. For the sake of time, Sadie, I'm seeing it's I'm sorry, I was very East Coast centric in the time I was about to say. We have 18 minutes left in our time together. Would it be helpful for me to kind of pause at this point, open things up for questions, or what is the kind of preference in terms of timing, would you say?
Yeah, we can see if we have any questions right now, and then if not, we can go over a little bit more.
Okay.
And then, yeah, just the last 5 minutes, I was just give some announcements before the end.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess just as my final word before I open things up for questions is that this is the kind of like overview without going really nitty-gritty into every single one of the cells on these handouts overview of the safety program. It's incredibly detailed. There's a lot of interventions. There's a lot of moving parts that I usually cover over the course of 9 hours. I'm going to pause. And if there aren't any questions, I can maybe prioritize a few of the interventions that I could teach and share. And I can probably go over maybe 2 of them during our remaining time together. But I'm going to stop there and open things up for questions. Pat, I see your hand.
Yes, good morning.
Good morning.
My question is maybe a little bit long, but
That's okay.
I'm thinking about long-term success, which I would identify as, youth living into adulthood and on. And where this treatment plan, where does their maturity influence or become a part of that long-term success, or if it does? And then the second part is, what about any parental suicide history? Two
Oh,
different questions.
really good question, that last one, by the way. So yes, so the first one is that this is a very collaborative approach. And so it is heavily dependent on, well, actually, a big piece is youth maturity. And what we want to do, though, is past youth maturity, I care deeply about implementation feasibility. And what I find, regardless of maturity, most teens can reasonably engage in a discussion on, is this something that I can practice between now and next time? Is this something that helps me to feel safe or unsafe? Is this something that is getting me closer towards my goal of safety or just kind of relief from depressive symptoms? Um, I think for big decisions like lethal means restriction, for example, and the frequency of protective monitoring, those for sure are influenced by youth maturity. Those are times when I may lean more heavily on my own clinical experience, or I may lean more heavily on parent report around, oh, maybe we hold off on you driving yourself to school for the next month. Maybe we take a break for actually a few months. Or, oh, you know what? Love that you still enjoy cooking, but maybe mom needs to hold on to the knives for the time period, and you're not going to be using that unsupervised in the kitchen. And so being able to still parent and still set boundaries, because these are still teenagers we're dealing with. And while I do want to make sure that they feel empowered and that this is a collaborative approach in duration of treatment, in interventions that we highlight, in the practice that we assign each week, there are certain safety, I'd say, conversations that I would be hesitant sometimes to be too heavily influenced if there's a maturity concern from the youth. The second question I heard was about history of parent suicidality and parent suicide attempts. So that's where I lean very heavily into the trauma-informed lens. And I very directly ask, what can you share with me is your emotional response to the situation? And can you talk to me about what your experience has been like in the mental health care system? I will query pretty directly, is this your first time seeing a therapist? Is this your first time in therapy? And getting a little bit of background information. That's why we have the parent safety plan, is because sometimes, well, not actually, with fair frequency, we know that this can run in families. And so we'd want to make sure that folks are linked to care appropriately. In our center here, we actually offer services for parents, and we partner them up with an individual therapist. If they need actually as like separate then care from their teen for their own trauma, their own history, that they may need addressed. So I do check-ins. I will create a safety plan. A really good example is we actually had a parent reach out to us about whether or not they need to go inpatient hospitalization for themselves. And so we ended up doing a chain analysis. We ended up doing a safety plan, and we have now regular weekly check-ins with that parent to help them support their own safety. So it's very much part of the, I'd say, the treatment picture, because, and I don't mean this in a way that in any way discredits the parents' lived experience, but because parents are such a key role in helping the youth stay safe, we then want to make sure the parents are staying safe and getting the treatment they need. Because they are in many ways creating and structuring the home environment that is so essential for youth safety. Does that answer your question?
It does, and then kind of leads a little bit to another one. So in your experience, how would that addressing the parents' needs impact the child or the youth's progress through their own treatment?
Oh, I've seen it as very positive. I've seen it as like once the parents start to get their needs addressed, they have more bandwidth to be an effective parent. They have more time to focus on their teen's needs, because they're now getting the help that they need. I think a really good example, it's straying a little bit from suicide, but I had a youth who's in care, who's suicidal and has a history of sexual assault and abuse. Um, and the mom has the same. And the mom is now getting services because it was traumatic for her to bring her daughter here because she felt like she felt as a parent that her child was sexually assaulted in a suicide. And that was impacting her ability to be there for her daughter. And because she's now getting help for her own emotional traumatic response from her own trauma, she is now able to be more present for her teen and not be triggered when she brings her teen to care here because she felt so guilty and overwhelmed. Really awesome question. Thank you for asking those. Anyone else have any questions? Anything at all?
And I know a lot of people that couldn't attend today, they will be watching the recording.
Okay.
And Dr. Zullo will be back next month for our Let's Chat on April 3rd. So he'll be there in the first half of the meeting to answer any questions that anyone has afterwards. As well as we will have the Cal OES grant updates and then some peer sharing opportunities as well. So I'm going to drop the registration link for the Let's Chat meeting next month, and he will be back to answer questions. Jennifer Nielsen asked, can we get trained?
So I think that's a conversation about who would that be through? And so I know I have very limited understanding of what like the overlap between everyone here is. I don't know if that's a conversation I would have with you, Sadie, if that's something that could be offered through your organization. Oh, I don't know why it's doing that. If that's something like we would like contract with you to offer training for folks, or if you know there's an organization here that would want to contract with the ASAP Center and having one of our trainers work with you, that is another option. Janet, I see your hand.
Yes, thank you. So we're an advocacy organization. We are not a therapeutic organization. This program sounds fantastic. How can we find local providers that use the safety program?
Oh, that's a really good question. Where are you?
We're in Southern California.
Okay. Most of the safety training has occurred in Los Angeles and in Sacramento. So what you could do is you could send me an email about where you're located, and I'll reach out to the ASAP Center team, and they can let me know if there's anyone near you who is trained in safety.
All right, thank you. We're
Of
just an
course.
hour north of LA, so that could be feasible if we were working with a family that needed that.
Awesome.
Are there any last minute questions? I did go ahead and drop a evaluation survey in the chat. If you can please take it, it will help us better plan for our next two symposiums coming up in May and June. All right, well, thank you so much. Oh, Karina, did you have a question?
I don't have a question. I just want, I know that it could be like awkward when you do like a training. So I just want to say thank you that I think your point about keeping the document alive is really important. And it's something that I try to convey to like clinicians, especially when they're new coming into the program, is that sometimes it's not, it's just a way of like, I'm checking the boxes. And I think that's so important, and looking at the different levels. And so I just want to say thank you for that. And I know it was quiet, and I just wanted to let you know I was listening and took that in, and I really appreciated it.
No, thank you. That means a lot. I really appreciate that
Mm.
feedback.
Thank you so much. It was such fruitful information, a lot of information, but it was very helpful and it was great to have you. I really appreciate it.
Of course, I'm so happy you reached out. This was really lovely to meet everyone and to talk with you all today.
Yeah. And thank you everyone for spending your Thursday morning with us. I know it's a busy week, but thank you for taking the time. I hope you all have a wonderful day.
Take care, everyone.